old Nintendo gamer.
And son.
The main game I want to talk about this week is Bowser's Fury. Obviously that comes as part of like the Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. But I like obviously as Bowser's Fury is like a separate sort of entity. I've completed it 100%. And I would have spoke about it last week if I was on the podcast. So like another week has passed since then, which means I've probably forgot some of the wee nuances that I would have mentioned. But there's not too much detail I want to go into anyway. Obviously it's a different sort of beast to what 3D World would be, because 3D World is like, it's obviously very level based, and like each level is sort of a unique thing, which is bringing in like new mechanics and stuff, and new environments. Whereas this is like Bowser's Fury is sort of like one big open world, and me and open world games aren't always the best of friends. So to bring that sort of structure into a Mario game is dangerous for me. Like I know Super Mario Odyssey, for example, has pretty big open areas to go and like search for moons, and in a way this kind of almost feels like an expanded version of like a single level from Odyssey, but it doesn't have quite the freedom of movement that I would say Odyssey has, especially with like using Cappy to like extend your jumps and whatnot. So this pretty much borrows the control scheme from 3D World, where you're not locked into 8 directions as you would be in 3D World, but you still have to like hold like the Y button to run, for example, which in a way for some reason feels fine in 3D World, because 3D World is almost like a 2D type Mario game brought into a 3D space. But when it's sort of more open like this and feels kind of like Odyssey, they having to hold the run button almost feels like a restriction in some ways. It's like you almost want that sort of like Mario 64 type movement, you know, just sort of like with the long jumps and whatnot. It's just, it doesn't feel quite the same, unfortunately. So like I say, it's one big open world, and sort of like you start off in one wee area, and like there's lighthouses up around like all over the map, and each time you collect it's not moons this time, it's cat shines they're called. So once you collect one, it like lights up the lighthouse, and there are like 5 cat shines to get per lighthouse, and sort of like per area kind of. So you'll be playing along, and you'll do some sort of task, and you'll get a certain amount of like cat shines, and then it'll maybe open up another area. And the way it kind of works is like each area, although it's its own thing, like if you do like a particular mission in that area and then sort of go back to the sort of like the starting wee like arch of that area and sort of turn the camera around again, it's kind of like it kind of opens up like the next mission in that zone, where things will be maybe like placed a bit differently in that area, or there'll be different obstacles or different things to take care of. So it's a wee bit strange in the way it kind of works. It's, in some ways it's seamless, but in other ways it's like it feels odd to like do something in an area and then sort of have to go back to the start of that area and then just to check to see if something new has appeared, and then sometimes it hasn't, and then you maybe just move on somewhere else, and then you'll come back and something else will be there next time. But the main sort of like gimmick of the game kind of is like obviously like the Fury Bowser, which appears every so often, and obviously like he's very big, and you need him to appear at times to get some of the cat shines, mainly in every single area there seems to be like a place where there's like blocks that only can be like damaged by like Bowser's Fury, really. Like he sort of like breathes fire out and he like destroys those blocks, and there's always like a shine hiding in behind them, so you'll sort of be like running around kind of maybe like dodging whatever other attacks there are. and then just sort of going over to where the blocks are, and then just waiting for Bowser to breathe his fire, and then you do that. But once you have a certain amount of cat shines, it opens up like I forget what it's called. It's the bell, but it's like a super bell, but it's like
Giga
Bell, yeah. So like once that's unlocked, next time Bowser comes up, you can like go and grab that as Mario, and then you turn into this big, huge like Giga Cat Mario or whatever it's called, and you can like take care of Bowser. And I think maybe like 2 or 3 times throughout the game you'll be rewarded for taking care of Bowser in that way, but the rest of the time, like, there's no point grabbing that Giga Bell to defeat him, because it just defeats him, and then like there's no reward for it, so you're just back to where you were. So you might as well just ignore it, because eventually he stops attacking enemy and things does go back to normal. Yeah, I mean the boss fights are okay. Like it's not like as fun maybe as like throwing Bowser around in Super Mario 64, for example. But it does get to the point where it's like when you don't need the Fury Bowser to be about in an area, when you're just trying to get something done. For example, there's a couple of shines which I actually find myself leaving to the end, where you have to, there's like a sort of like mother cat, and you have to go and find like all the cats, like all her children or whatever. They're all like the same type of cats, and bring them back to her. But when Bowser goes into like Fury modes and everything sort of changes from day to night, those cats sort of, you can't hold on to them, so you might be like carrying like a cat from one location, and you sort of have to traverse a wee bit to get to where the mother is, and like if you touch the water or whatever, it's like you've just failed that bit. So if you're carrying it a long distance and then just Bowser just happens to go into one of his moods, then it's frustrating. Like it's not a particularly well designed element, I wouldn't have thought. But apart from that, like it's decent. It's definitely not my favourite Mario game. I think the 3D world portion is an awful lot better. And I've seen quite a few people saying like, I really want this to be the structure of like the next Mario game, whatever it may be. And I'm not entirely convinced of that at all. Like it's one big area, like it all kind of looks very similar in some ways, and there are like different elements to some of the areas and stuff that sort of like differentiate it. But because it's one big area and it's sort of all surrounded by water, and you kind of like use Placey to sort of navigate around, and he has his own cat shines that he can get for like certain tasks, and like he never quite controls maybe as tightly as you hope for at times, and that was a similar complaint probably with 3D World at the time. But in some ways there isn't maybe enough variety in some of the areas, and then because it is sort of like an open world thing, and like if you're sort of like doing a challenge on a level and then you maybe like fall down at the wrong time, then you kind of have to like work your way back around to the start of that bit to kind of start the thing again, and it's not as seamless as just like dying in like a 3D world level and then just starting from like the beginning again, or the checkpoint. It's not as convenient, and I didn't really like that aspect. I would say if you're getting 3D World plus Bowser's Fury just for Bowser's Fury, because maybe you've already played the game on Wii U, I'd be reluctant to say it's worth it, because I don't think it is. I probably spent maybe 5 or 6 hours in it in total, I would say. But it never really reached like the heights that other Mario games like regularly attain. It's like it never really peaked for me. It was just like, oh, there's a shine, oh, there's another shine. It's just it wasn't a great Mario game for me. Like as a package with 3D World, it's definitely a nice wee extra. And there is like if you're wanting to play it with like your son or something, like he'd quite happily run about as Mario, and you can be like Bowser Jr. to be able to like point at enemies to attack them and like uncover a few wee secrets and things. So there is that, but if you're only getting it for budget, I would say no. I'd also say wait for a sale, but that's obviously unlikely with Nintendo titles. But yeah, I was kind of disappointed with it in the end, if I'm honest.
I think that Bowser changing at the wrong time and all that would really infuriate me. It's just it feels like it's there just to pad it out, you know, and elongate something which doesn't need extra time put into it.
Yeah, that's right, because he does appear quite regularly, and like if you're sort of in an area and you want him to, like, if you're needing those blocks to be like destroyed or whatever, it's like, oh well, maybe just sort of, I'll not deviate too far away from this area because I want to come back there whenever he's on one. But then when you don't want him to appear and he appears, it's like, fine. But you can generally like take care of your task while that's happening anyway. It just makes everything like dark and you have to avoid his attacks as well. But it's never too difficult to avoid generally. But it is an inconvenience at times, definitely.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a like if you've enjoyed our content. You can also check out our other great content on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the N-E Café podcast from all good podcast providers. Just follow the links in the description below.